of Balaam is the second part of that verse. I think he's got two errors. One is he's an unethical prophet who holds out his gift for hire. He is a prophet. We're going to see that he used unapproved methods of divination and probably dealt a few tarot cards and maybe did a few astrology charts, but he held out his gift of prophecy for hire, meaning, like when I read that verse out of Micah, whatever you pay for, I'll tell you what you want to know. I'll give you you pay well, I'll give you a good blessing, a good profit. If you don't pay, well, you can expect not so good. The other thing is, and I think this is really interesting, he operates under a natural reasoning that God could not fail to curse a disobedient people. Meaning, what he does, we're going to see it sooner or later, we're going to get to it. He's going to make these prophecies and blessings to Balak. None of it works out the way Balak wants, but the end result is that there's an uprising where it's a bunch of sexual immorality going on, and Balaam is going to get the blame for it. We're going to see that he told Balak that regardless of whether these prophecies work or not, there's another way you can get, what Balak's wanting to do is to defeat. He's wanting to weaken the forces of Israel so that he can defeat them in battle. And what Balaam tells him is there's another way. What you do is you do something that gets these people all hung up with sexual immorality and worshiping other gods, and God will have no choice but to punish them. That's his second error. We're going to see that way turns out to be successful. It actually does. And God does punish them, but Balaam is going to pay dearly for it. Okay, the way of Balaam. The error of Balaam. The wanderings are over. We're talking about the days of Moses. The wanderings are over. Israel is on the march toward the promised land. They're not there yet. They're on the way. There was a miraculous overthrow of Egypt. Where did that happen? Where did Egypt get overthrown? Red Sea. That had to strike fear in their adversaries, and it struck fear in the hearts of the Canaanite tribes, because that's where the forces of Israel were going, right there where they are. They just defeated the mightiest of all, the Egyptians, and now they're coming here. Okay, today we're going to talk about the error of Balaam. We'll see that Balak, the king of Moab, tries to hire Balaam to curse the Israelites, hoping to weaken them so that he can defeat them in battle. What that says is, he thinks that the words that Balaam uses is what has the effect on the people he's cursing. If I curse you, God's going to honor that. No, actually, it's not even God. It's the words that Balaam says is the effect of whatever he's talking about. So if he's cursing, then you turn into a curse. If he's blessing, you turn into a blessing. Okay, surely we understand that this is all about God, His purpose and His will, not the words of Balaam. Just because somebody says something, I don't care how great a preacher you are, just because you say something doesn't mean that that's what God's going to do. God does what He wants. Okay, but fear and dread is building in the heart of Balak, the king of Moab, because of the reports of what Israel was doing to his neighbors. Listen to this. Let's go to Numbers 21. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers 21. There's some good stuff back here. verse 21 and 22. Y'all there? Okay, Israel is, verse 21 and 22, Israel is marching. They come to what's the name of the country? It's the Amorites. So what's the name of the country? What's the name of where are the Amorites from? Moab, Edom, Ammon. Ammon. Okay. Israel sent messengers to say to Sihon, king of the Amorites, let us pass through your country. We will not turn aside into any field or vineyard or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway until we have passed through your country. All we want to do is pass through. Just let us go through. Then in verse 23, Sihon would not let Israel pass through his territory. He mustered his entire army and marched out into the desert against Israel. When he reached Jahaz, he fought with Israel. That was a bad mistake. All they wanted to do was pass through. Instead, they decided they'd fight. Verse 24 and 25 are pretty clear. Let's look at them. Israel, however, put him to the sword and took over his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, but only as far as the Ammonites, because their border was fortified. Israel captured all the cities of the Amorites and occupied them, including Heshbon and all his surrounding settlements. All you had to do was just let it go through. They chose to fight and they lost everything. Verse 31, he took all his stuff. Not only did he whip them, he took all his stuff. Verse 31 says they even settled their land. So Israel settled the land of the Amorites. So we're just going to live here. I like it. Verse 33 says, then they turned and went along the road toward Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, and his whole army marched out to meet them in the battle at Edrei. Now, Og, king of Bashan, was the guy that slept in a 13.5-foot bed. Remember me talking about that? That's a big man. And I don't think that I'm pretty sure he used all of it. I don't think he just chose a 13.5 bed because he was 6 feet tall. I think he chose a 13.5-foot bed because he was 13 feet tall. He was a big man. He gets his troops and they march out to meet him, it says. And verse 34 says, the Lord said to Moses, do not be afraid of him. I would be afraid of him. He's 13.5 feet tall. I had to fight him one-on-one. Do not be afraid of him, for I have handed him over to you. Notice it's already past tense. The battle hasn't even occurred yet. We talked about past tense means it's a certainty. I've already handed him over to you with his whole army and his land. Do to him what you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon. So here is what Balak, king of Moab, is hearing about. You know, they're going to these places. It doesn't mean they're getting further away from Balak. It means they're getting closer to him. And he sees them marching. You know, he hears reports of them coming. He's whipping all these guys. And he's getting closer. Here he comes. Verse 35 says, so they struck him down together with his sons and his whole army, leaving them no survivors, and they took possession of his land. So they took that land too. And that's a lot of people too. We're going to see how big this crowd was that's coming at him. So do you think Balak, king of Moab, is getting nervous? The Israelites are getting closer, but maybe he gets a short reprieve. He's already hearing all this stuff coming at him. He gets a reprieve. Look at 22:1. Then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. They stop before they get to him to camp out. It means they're not moving anymore. So Balak has got time to think about what he wants to do. So out of fear and actually terror, he sends for Balaam. Verses 2 through 5. Let me read those. Now Balak, son of Zipper, what a name. What's your daddy's name? Zipper. Turned sideways, he stick out his tongue, he looks like a zipper. Now Balak, son of Zipper, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, "This horde is going to lick up everything around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field." That sounds pretty thorough. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to summon Balak, son of Beor, who was at Pethor, near the river, in his native land. Now, where do I want to stop? Well, that's pretty clear. He gets a reprieve, they slow down and camp out, and he sends for somebody that's going to give him some help. And what he's going to do is ask for a curse to be put on these people, and he's going to pay for it. Look at verse 7. It says, 7, where are you? 6, 7. The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them the fee for divination. When they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak had said. What he said. So he's got the money with him, and he goes to talk to him. I don't know why I read 7 before I read verse 6, but verse 6 says, now come and put a curse on these. Here's what the message was. Now come and put a curse on these people, because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the country. For I know that those you bless are blessed, and those you curse are cursed. You just say the right words, I'll pay you. You say the right words, and that's going to be just exactly what I need. Okay, the first step is that Balaam tried to do what seemed like he tried to do what was right. Look at verse 12 and 13. We're going to get to the talking donkey here in a minute. But God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people, because they are blessed." I like it. And then 13 says, the next morning Balaam got up and said to Balak's princes, "Go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go to you." Now what I want you to do is you're going to listen to the stuff that I'm reading, and Balaam is going to look like a good guy. He's going to look like a good guy all the way through. So we got to do the whole story before we can make a decision. Verse 18 says, but Balaam answered him, "Even if Balak gave me his palace filled with gold and silver, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God." He's claiming he knows God. Verse 19 and 20 says, let me read that. 19 and 20 says, "Now stay here tonight." He's talking to those princes, the messengers that came. "Now stay here tonight as the others did, and I will find out what else the Lord will tell me." Verse 20, "That night God came to Balaam and said, 'Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you.'" He finally says, go. Now, you don't have enough information here really to know everything that's going on. He says, "I can't go," at the beginning. Now he says, God's telling me to go. But when you go, God's going to pay you. He's going to want to pay you to say certain things, but that's not what you're going to do. Verse 21. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Pretty clear. No, believe it or not, I got nothing to say about that. Verse 22 and 23 have to do with the first encounter with the angel of the Lord. Now, I think you're going to think this is neat. Let me read 22. "But God was very angry. We do not know why. He just all of a sudden is mad about something, and I don't know that we'll ever know. But it says he got angry. when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. In verse 23, all right, God, he's out there riding along. God's mad because he's out there. And then we come to 23. 23 says, when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, he turned off of the road into a field. Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. The donkey sees the angel, not Balaam. The donkey sees the angel of the Lord standing in the middle of the road. He's got a sword in his hand. Donkey crashes off in the ditch to avoid him, and Balaam's mad because what'd you do that for? Donkey, I'm going to beat you. So he beats him. Okay, so Balaam does not see the angel of the Lord. Then you have a second encounter with the angel of the Lord. In fact, 2 more times. Look at 28 through 30. 28 through 30. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth. What do you think that means? Checking his teeth? Don't think so. Opened his mouth, and she said to Balaam. She, the donkey, said to Balaam. What does that mean? It's a talking donkey. Gets home at night. Honey, you'll never guess what happened to me today. My donkey talked.
Well, I thought you meant the donkey got home at night and said, honey,
It could have been. Could have been. Could have been.
And I got a beating on top of it.
My donkey talked. And the worst part is I answered him. All right, let's keep going. So, what have I done to make you beat me 3 times? We're going through 30. Balaam answered the donkey, you have made... that's funny, what you said. You made a fool of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? Now I want to tell you something. Back when I was a young man in the 70s, if you believe the Bible literally for what it says, he's preaching so you got no answers. Everybody's just listening. He says, if you believe that, he said, if you believe that, that means you believe this and you believe that, and you believe in talking donkeys. I remember that. I did not know this story. He said, what is he talking about? If you believe that, that means you believe in talking donkeys. Now, I don't know what this means. And what I'm telling you is, I don't know what you think it means, but I'm telling you, you do not have to understand what it means. It says that he talked. So my inclination is to say he talked. But if you say, maybe it doesn't mean that, well, that's fine. But I'm telling you, over time, you will understand. You will come to an understanding of what this means. If you're so led by God, if it's a real issue for you, sooner or later you will come to an understanding. Because this is not the only weird thing in the Bible. Yeah, this is really nothing. I mean, this is not the weirdest thing either. I mean, there's lots of weird things. But the point of the matter is that over time... Okay, so that's what happened with Balaam. Interesting verse. Notice the angel of the Lord allowed himself to be worshipped. Look at verse 31. Verse 31 says, the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. The Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn, so he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord allowed himself to be worshipped. Now, this is just a side note. It's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. Angels don't do that. Satan is the only angel in the Bible that allows himself to be worshipped. What happens with any other time when an angel shows up, what happens? Oh, fear strikes. They want to bow down and worship the angel. What does the angel say? Get up. He says, get up. Don't worship me. This angel never said that. Now, what's that all about? That's a widely held view. The widely held view about that angel of the Lord is that it is Jesus Christ. There's no other reason for that angel to be worshipped. I think that is pretty interesting. It's not what we're talking about. It's just a widely held view. You need to know about it. So who is the angel? I told you that. Verse 35. The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, oh man, how does this happen? The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. So that's just another reiteration of his command to go and just do what I tell you. And 36 through 38 says, when Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the Moabite town on the Arnon border at the edge of his territory. Balak said to Balaam, did I not send you an urgent summons? Why didn't you come to me? Am I really not able to reward you? See, there's been a delay because of all this stuff that's going on. And Balak thinks that Balaam delayed hoping to get more money. I'll just hold back if he was going to pay that much then. Surely it's closer to the time when the Israelites are going to attack him. Maybe he'll pay more now. So that's what those verses are about. So Balaam is going to give 4 prophecies. It's probably a good time to stop right there. But he's going to give 4 prophecies, and we're going to see that they're not curses. You know, he was hired by Balak to curse Israel, hoping to weaken them so he'd have a chance to defeat them in battle. So here comes, God says, all right, go on over there, but you're going to do what I tell you, not what he tells you. And it turns out it's 4 prophecies that are good. They're prophecies, they're not blessings, they're prophecies about things that Balak sees off in the future. And they're pretty neat prophecies. So we're going to stop there. Yes, sir. Lucky for me, we ran out of time, so it gave me a time to rethink what I was doing. So I went back and pulled out some information about Balak and soothsayers and diviners and prophets that are not of God, so that you would know that Balak is not a good guy. Because when you read those 4 prophecies, you're going to say, what's wrong with Balak? He looks pretty good to me. But when you get the whole story of his life, he's not so good. Look at Leviticus 19. Leviticus 19. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus 19, verse 26. B. Second part of the verse. First part is not all that exciting unless you're cooking a steak. First part says, do not eat meat with the blood still in it. That's got nothing to do with Balaam. The next thing says, do not practice divination or sorcery. We kind of know there's not a lot of positive things associated with the word sorcery, but we probably don't know a lot about what divination is. Divination, the practice of seeking knowledge of the future by supernatural means. That's what our secular dictionary says. The Webster's dictionary says, divination. Webster says it's an unusual insight, intuitive perception. The person who practices divination is called a diviner. And here's what the dictionary says about him. Discover by guesswork or intuition. So, if you're a diviner, you're using guesswork. Or the second meaning of it is having supernatural or magical insight into future events. He's a fortune teller. Webster says a person who practices divination, a soothsayer. The art or practice that seeks to foresee or foretell future events or discover hidden knowledge, usually by interpretation of omens or by the aid of supernatural powers. These guys, that just tells you basically it's a fortune teller. God is not in there anywhere. Okay? This is secular dictionaries, and as far as Leviticus is concerned, anything that's not Jewish is secular. Okay? It's going to be out of there. So basically we're saying Leviticus 19:26 says, do not practice divination or sorcery. Look at Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 13. We're going to get down to it a little closer here. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not learn. Before I read this, when I was reading, I just remember this, Haley's Bible Handbook. I got to thinking, it just kind of sparked something in my brain. Moses wrote all of this stuff that we're reading, first 5 books of the Bible, before they went into the Promised Land. Because he was dead after that. Does that not impress you about this Bible? Before they went in the Promised Land, these first 5 books of the Bible already existed. All right, 18, 9 through 13. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices his son or daughter in the fire. That doesn't sound so good. Who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritualist, or who consults the dead, like seance, conjure up those spirits. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord, and because of these detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. He says, do not do those things. All right, chapter 18, verses 20 to 22. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name, anything I have not commanded him to say, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, must be put to death. You may say to yourselves, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims is in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. Do not be afraid of him. Hope you're listening to what I just read. You got it right there before you. That's talking about who is a prophet of God and who is not. And if you're not, if you're Jewish, it's probably not a good thing because you're going to be put to death. Israelite, not Jewish. Okay. I don't know if Balaam was ever actually called a prophet. I didn't see it. I don't know if he was or not. At best, he was a non-Israelite prophet. He was a Gentile, but he was not a prophet of God. How do I know that? Because he does all of those things that we just read. He used them all. Probably had tarot cards in his back, too. Probably did palm reading. I mean, he probably did them all. I know he wasn't a prophet of God. He was a diviner. Look at Numbers 24:1. I want you to know I'm not making this stuff up. Numbers 24:1. Now when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not resort to sorcery as at other times, but turned his face toward the desert. He saw he was supposed to do something that pleased God, so he didn't resort to sorcery like he usually does. So this is a common practice with him. It's not like, the unusual practice is to get something from God to report to the people. The normal practice was for him to use sorcery. Look at Numbers 22:7. See, I can make a short verse take forever to teach. 22:7. The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them the fee for divination. When they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak had said. Well, he got paid. He gets paid to do this thing that he does. He was a wicked prophet, not a false prophet. I don't even know that he was a prophet. I don't know that it ever calls him a prophet. God did give him some prophecies to speak. God can do whatever he wants to do. He uses all kinds of people to get his stuff done, to fulfill his purposes. He's using Balaam. In this case, we'll see these verses. We'll see that God gave him 3 of these 4 prophecies, specifically in Numbers 23:5, 23:16, and 24:2. He claimed God. Look at Numbers 22:18. This is a big deal. Numbers 22:18. But Balaam answered him, even if Balak gave me his palace filled with silver and gold, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. He claims God to be his own. He was apostate. Anybody that claims God to be his own and does the things that he's doing is apostate. He claims God when it's convenient. All the other times he rejects him. That's what we said. One of the primary trait of an apostate is to reject the power of God. I don't need God. I'm going to use sorcery. I'm going to use this or that. Yes, sir. He was apostate. To claim to be, now listen to this. You have to think about this. To claim to be and not be is an apostate. Look at Revelation 13:11. I remember thinking this kind of stuff was pretty neat when we studied Revelation. Revelation 13:11. This beast that they're talking about here is the false prophet. Okay, it's not the Antichrist, it's the other guy, the false prophet. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. He looked like a lamb. How is Jesus represented as a lamb? He looked like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. He was apostate. That's how these apostates are. They have one message that looks to be true, but the way they live their life or what they really believe is false. Okay, so that gets us down to, I think it gets me down to here. I forgot where it was. But no, that's good because, see, Balaam, when we read these prophecies, you're going to say, if that's all that I brought to you, you're going to say, he's a good guy. What's the big deal? So let's get into it. First chapter 23. The first of those four. We're not going to read all the scripture, but we're going to look at pieces of all of them. I'm sorry. Numbers 23. Don't spend much time in Jude. Have you noticed that? That's Jude's fault. It's not my fault. Verse 5. How do we know? Okay, God can do whatever He wants to do. He can use people in any way that He wants. He can use any person He wants, believer or not, apostate or not, to get His purposes accomplished. How do we know this first oracle comes from God? Look at verse 5, 23 verse 5. The Lord put a message in Balaam's mouth and said, go back to Balak and give him this message. We know because Moses said God told Balaam. God told him. Verse 8 says, how can I curse those whom... Balaam is giving this oracle. He works down to verse 8 and he says, how can I curse those whom God has not cursed? Well, we're finding out this thing that Balaam was originally paid to do was curse the Israelites. He gets over there, and the whole thing has been changed to be a blessing. How can I've come here, you paid me to come curse the Israelites. How can I curse them if God doesn't want them cursed? Then look at verse 9 and 10. Here's what he sees. From the rocky peaks I see them, from the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the fourth part of Israel? I don't know what that is. Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my end be like theirs. When they die, I hope I die like they do. I want to be one of them. That's what he said. But what he really said was, which was interesting in verse 9, I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. From this point on, Israel is going to be run over so many times by so many people, but they're always going to be apart. God is always going to keep them separate. They're going to be taken out of Judah, they're going to be taken out of Jerusalem, they're going to live, with the Babylonians, but they're always going to be kept separate. That's the first part. Look at the second oracle. Go to verse 16. How do we know God gave him this oracle? Look at verse 16. The Lord met with Balaam and put a message in his mouth and said, go back to Balak and give him this message. It's the same thing as the first one. You thought you were coming over here to curse these guys? Curse Israel? God's got a different kind of idea. Here's the message I want you to give him. We're going to cover this whole thing. Look at, let's start with verse 18. Then he uttered this oracle. Arise, Balak, and listen. Hear me, son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. In other words, God never changes. Have you ever heard that? I got a feeling these guys hadn't heard that before. God never changes. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? If he promises something, you can count on it. We're coming to a point that's not going to make Balak very happy. Verse 20, I have received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot change it. I wanted to curse. I'm getting paid to curse them. But this is what he says. 21, no misfortune is seen in Jacob, no misery observed in Israel. The Lord their God is with them. The shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. Listen, there in verse 23, there is no sorcery against Jacob, no divination against Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and of Israel, see what God has done. There are no substitutions for God's word. Divination, sorcery, palm reading, tarot cards, checking out the shape of livers. They used to do that too. Kidneys, they look at them, the way they look. Did you know that? Yeah. Weird stuff. The people rise like a lioness. Now this is going to really gripe Balak. The people rise like a lioness. They rouse themselves like a lion. That does not rest till he devours his prey and drinks the blood of his victims. Who is just across the river getting ready to come into Moab? The Israelites, and they devour nations. Just what Balak wants to hear. Balak asked for a curse in verse 13. He shows his frustration in verse 25. Look what he said in verse 25. Then Balak said, neither curse them at all nor bless them at all. Then in 26, Balaam, look at 26. Balaam answered, did I not tell you I must do whatever the Lord said? That was way back when those guys went to get Balaam. He told them then, I have to do what God says. When I got here, I told you the same thing. Now I've given you the first couple of oracles. I'm telling you the same thing. Whatever he told me, I have to say. Okay, the third oracle. How do we know this oracle is from God? Look at chapter 24, verse 2. Probably got it figured out by now. When Balaam looked out and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came on him, and he uttered this oracle, his oracle. The Spirit of God came to him. So we know it's from God. Okay? He's not saying this. Moses is saying this. Balak asked for a curse in verse 27. Again, Balaam blesses. I think this actually, this what really aggravated Balak in chapter 24, verse 8 and 9. Chapter 24, 8 and 9. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. They devour hostile nations. This is not what he's looking to hear. They devour hostile nations because Moab is a hostile nation. And they break their bones in pieces, and with their arrows they pierce them. Like a lion, they crouch and lie down like a lioness who dares to rouse them. Would you want to wake up a sleeping lion? Ah. May those who bless you be blessed, and those who curse you be cursed. Balak, I think, really was upset over that business about devouring nations. Look at, those three. Oh yeah, 24, verse 10 and 11. Okay, he's just giving him that oracle. And he says, they devour hostile nations, and you're one of them. Okay, the 10 and 11 says this. Then Balak's anger burned against Balaam. Why would he be mad at Balaam? Because he thinks Balaam's words are where the power is. I paid you. I'm going to pay you. I was going to pay you. He's not going to pay you, but I was going to pay you for a curse against Israel. And he's had 3 shots at it now, and none of them were curses. In fact, if anything, it was stuff that upset Balak even more. He said his anger burned against Balaam. He struck his hands together and said to him, I summoned you to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them these 3 times. Now leave at once and go home. I said I would reward you handsomely, but the Lord has kept you from being rewarded. I think that's funny. Balak is blaming God. I think it was sarcasm, and I think he's blaming God. Look at 13 and 14. Yeah, I was going to pay you. but not now.
You're done.
Exactly. 13 and 14. Did I read those? I don't think. Even if Balak gave me his palace filled with silver and gold, I could not do anything of my own accord, good or bad, to go beyond the command of the Lord. See that? These three oracles just make Balak sound like just the kind of guy you want. He's just doing everything God said. It's all good, no bad. Now I'm going back to my people, but come, let me warn you of this people, what this people will do to your people. I told you, you told me to leave, but I got one more parting shot for you. And this is what this people is going to do to your people in the future. All right. The fourth oracle gives an amazing prophecy of the future relationship of Israel with Moab and Edom. It is messianic. This is pre-promised land. Okay? This goes way back there. It's messianic and it has part of the 1,000-year reign with Christ. Look at 15 to 19 of chapter 24. Yeah, 15 to 19. The oracle of Balaam, son of Beor, the oracle of one whose eye sees clearly. The oracle of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High. Now, before we go any further, I want to tell you this. I could not find anywhere where it says he got this from God. You know, on the other three, we had Moses telling us that Balaam got it from God. I don't see any of that. He says he got it from God, but for a guy to be a prophet who's claiming to be a prophet of God and saying, I got it from God, well, you can take that from, that in a quarter used to get you a cup of coffee. So, but I couldn't find it where somebody else said that. But when you read this, I think you're probably going to agree you got it from God. Listen to this. The oracle of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate and whose eyes are open. So he is definitely given the credit for this vision to God. Okay? But again, I can't verify that somebody else said he got it from God. Okay, verse 17. I see him, but not now. What does that mean? It's future. I see him not in this time, not in this era, but in some other era to come. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. I mean, I can see him, but he's not close to the time I'm going through. A star will come out of Jacob. Now, who does that sound like? Jesus Christ, Son of God. A scepter will rise out of Israel. Who does that sound like? Same guy. He will crush all right, this is the part that's going to thrill Balak. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of all the sons of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seir, his enemy, will be conquered, but Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. I do not know what that last part, the very last line, destroy the survivors of the city is. But this thing about Moab, if you read through Daniel, it says that Moab, Edom, and Ammon are three countries that are going to be protected from the Antichrist. They're where present-day Jordan is. They're on the east side of the Dead Sea, the east side of that mountain range. It goes right down through there. The east side, and they're going to be protected from the Antichrist. Not so after Jesus returns. Once he returns, he's going to crush whoever gets in the way of his kingdom. And he's saying Moab and Edom are two of those countries. And that's in the 1,000-year reign. We're already into that when we get to that. So he's saying he doesn't call him the Messiah. He calls him one. He's calling him a star that'll come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. That is Jesus Christ. And it talks about him being into what we know to be the 1,000-year reign. Okay, so verse 20 says, 25. What does 25 say? Then Balaam got up and returned home, and Balak went his own way. So Balaam goes home. Nobody changed hands. All right, so it's very confusing. It appears like Balaam did the right thing. He said he took what God said, reported it. I was going to get paid if I cursed the Israelites, but I did what God said. Well, that's what you want. You want obedience from God. So what's the deal? But he was greedy. He planned to curse Israel for pay, consistent with the desires of King Balak, but God prevented him from doing it. He changed the curse into a blessing. Look at 2 Peter 2:15. This is how we know we're starting to find things about Balaam here from other parts of the Bible. 2 Peter 2:15. They have left the straight way and wandered off to follow the way of Balaam, son of Beor, who loved the wages of wickedness. This is Peter. This is way off from where King Balak was in terms of thousands of years. He says Balaam loved the wages of wickedness. He was greedy. He was an evil man. Then in Revelation 2:14, flip over there real quick. See, this is what you have to do if you're going to be in here. Revelation 2:14. He does. This is Jesus speaking. Revelation 2:14. In all of these letters to the churches in Revelation, there's 7 churches. 5 of them, he had rebukes about all of them. And he has some good things to say, and he has some really bad things to say. For this church at Pergamum, he had some really bad things to say. Here's what he said in 14. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. Here's his rebuke. You have people there who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin by eating food sacrificed to idols and by committing sexual immorality. Then he goes on and says, likewise, you also have those who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. In another church, he says he hates the Nicolaitans. So they're equally bad. He doesn't like Balaam, the teaching of Balaam. He doesn't like the teaching of the Nicolaitans. He coupled them together. But what I want you to know is, what we're going to read about in a minute, is this tells you that what I'm going to read to you was sanctioned and suggested by Balaam. That's a big, ugly sexual immorality thing. Yeah, so I'd agree with that. What he did, there were 2 ways. I don't know if you can see that. I had 2 errors of Balaam. One was he was an unethical prophet who holds out his gift for hire. I've got this way, I've got this, I'm going to call it intuition. Okay, it's not, you just like the guys on TV that just
It's
use.
self-help, yeah.
Yeah.
Buy my book and you'll-
Yeah, exactly. Let's not get too personal here.
Sorry.
But he uses his gift to get paid. You know, and the Israelites did it. We talk about it in Ezekiel. Their prophets were in Isaiah. The leaders of the church, the elders, would bless the people based on how much money they gave. So this is nothing new, but that's what he would do. The second was, and we're going to talk about it right now, he operates under a natural reasoning that God could not fail to curse a disobedient people. All right, so he sits here, he's given them 4 positive oracles about Israel. He was supposed to curse them, but God gave him something different to say. But he says, there may be another way, Balak. What you do is get these people into a situation where they do sexually immoral things, where they worship other gods, then God will have no choice but to curse them, to punish them. And I thought, that's not in the Bible anywhere. I got to tell you, though, I found some good stuff about that. But Balak said, Balaam said, Balak, what you do, put them in a position where they'll worship other gods, where they'll do all these ungodly things, and God will have to. Because of how God is, he has to punish them. So look at Numbers 25, verses 1 through 3. This is what Jesus was talking about in Revelation 2:14. It's chapter 25, verses 1 through 3. While Israel was staying at Shittim, the men began to indulge in sexual immorality with Moabite women, who invited them to the sacrifices to their gods. You got the Moabite women, you got the Israelite men. I guess they thought they were good looking and wanted to spend some time with them. The women said, I want you to go to church with me. That's my words. They invited them to their sacrifices, and they went. The very thing God said, do not do. He's continually telling them, do not mix with the people, the foreign people. Then he says, the people ate and bowed down before these gods. They ate the food sacrificed to idols, and they bowed down to these pagan gods. Can you start to feel the hair on the back of God's neck bristling up? Just like Balaam said he would do. So Israel joined in worshiping the Baal of Peor, and the Lord's anger burned against them. Okay, I read Revelation 2:4. That pertains to these three verses. They ate food sacrificed to idols. They bowed down to other gods. They had sexual immorality with these Moabite women. And Philip's, see, I can't find anything anywhere that says Balaam suggested this, except in this. All right, let me read something to you. You know, we have spent a lot of time talking about uninspired, non-biblical sources being taught as tradition to the Hebrew people, the Israelites, the Jews, and all that coming up. And it's not stuff that we care about. We care about the Bible. It's the inspired Word of God, and their traditions that they got from extra biblical sources, unless they're quoted in our Bible. You know, if it's quoted out of their book into ours, then it becomes inspired. Every word of our Bible is inspired. And it becomes inspired because Jude decided to use it, Peter decided to use it, Jesus decided to use it, whatever. Okay? So here's what he said. Here's what this guy said about this. If I can find it now. Yeah. You'll see why my light goes on in my head. This was when he made his infamous suggestion to his royal patron. That's when Balaam made his suggestion to Balak. It isn't infamous with me, because it's not in my Bible. And when I taught Revelation, when I taught Numbers, I had the Numbers commentary. I don't know what I was using. I looked. I thought, let me tell you something. I spent 2 days looking for a book in my house that I do not have. I am serious. It was 2 days, wasn't it, Jan? I was heart sick because it was one of my commentaries with all my notes in it, and I thought, where have I left that book? She said, "Did you give it to Wayne?" And I said, "No, I don't loan those books out." And so I thought, I'm just gonna get my notes. And those notes, when we studied Numbers, it came out of the quarterly. We had the quarterly on Numbers. So I still had the quarterly, I had my notes stuck in there, so I know I didn't have a book. It's been 2 days looking for it. Okay? So, but when I taught out of the quarterly, they made the same kind of comment that Balaam, that this stuff in 25 verses 1 through 3 is attributed to a suggestion that Balaam made. And I couldn't find it anywhere. Well, I'm happy with it now. I want to read this to you. This is when he made his infamous suggestion to his royal patron. My lord king, talking about Balak, there's more than one way to accomplish your goal. Since you cannot curse them, I suggest that you corrupt them. Use the temple harlots. I guarantee you, my lord, that their God will judge them if you just entangle them in immorality. More so if you think their immorality if you can link their immorality to the worship of your pagan gods. Their God is a jealous God. So he's getting that. He never really, Phillips never really says where he got that from. But he calls it infamous. It's not in the Bible, so he had to get it from some extra-biblical source. Now, I want to tell you one more thing. We're nearly through here. Here's what this commentary says about the same thing. And this came out of something written by Philo. Have you heard of Philo? Historian. On the life of Moses. The account of Numbers testifies to Balaam's true character since he was slain fighting against Israel, and the sexual sin at Baal Peor in which the Midianites snare Israel is attributed to Balaam's advice. All right. This advice of Balaam is portrayed as follows in Pseudo-Philo. Here's what was written in that book written by Philo. And it was apparently taught as Jewish tradition. That's why they all seem to know where it came from. Pick out the most beautiful women who are among us and in Midian, and station them naked and adorned with gold and precious stones before them. And when they see them and lie with them, they will sin against their Lord and fall into your hands. That all came from tradition. But it also came from the words of our Savior. He's pointing back to this and saying it was Balaam's idea. If you get these people hooked up with these women, these pagan women, they're going to fall right into your hands, Balak. So, that was how that went. So, if that's not enough, lest we go away thinking Balaam was a good guy, because of the blessings with King Balak, he showed his true colors fighting against Israel. We won't go read it, but it's in Numbers 31, verse 8. He died on the battlefield fighting against Israel. Does that sound like a guy you want to be one of your prophets? We have further evidence that Balaam's advice had led to the sexual immorality of Numbers 25, 1 through 3. I just covered that. We also have further evidence of God's judgments against the participants. I want to read this to you. Then we'll be through. Numbers 31, verses 15 through 18. If you want to know how God really feels, Numbers 31, verses 15 through 18. Have you allowed all the women to live? He asked them. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice. So we have some stuff here that points back to something that Balaam suggested, and were the means of turning the Israelites away from the Lord in what happened at Peor, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. Now, because of that, here's what I want you to do. Kill all the boys, kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man. As a result of that experience, that's what I want you to do. That was the end of it. I thought there was more, but that was it. God insists on purity of his people. And his people insist on not being pure. You can read the entire Old Testament and you have these gigantic roller coaster rides of faith of Israel, no faith, faith, no faith. When you get into Isaiah 1 started it all for me. God said, I don't want any more of your burnt offerings. I don't want any of your uplifted hands in prayer. When you come into my courts, you trample them down. He said, what I want is your heart. And from that point on, for the next 150 years, it got worse. When the Babylonians take Judah, take Jerusalem, we covered some of this, they were worshiping idols in the temple. And it got so bad, God said, I'm just leaving this place. And his glory left the temple. So, that's what apostasy leads to. But that's what he had. You pretty much summed it up over there a minute ago. Balaam was an apostate. He was used by God, but he was an apostate, and people that followed him were following an apostate. Okay. So next week we're going to